Good morning. Welcome to the, what is today? May 21st live stream. Today we are going to talk about a few different topics, just whatever happens to be on my mind. Right now I am reading this wonderful book I pick up from the library called Semiotics and Linguistics. So I spent a little bit of time this morning going through one of the chapters about language change, and I thought it would be just an interesting discussion because one of the things that is currently, currently, it's always a topic in language, right? Is how language changes and should language change, right? Lots of people have opinions on what they feel their language should sound like. What words should people use? How should they say those words? So this chapter on language change by Jean Acheson addresses a lot of these topics that is very common. It's a common topic of discussion in linguistic circles. So the first thing that caught my eye that I wanted to share with you was the idea of humans as friendly animals, right? Because I want to bring back real quickly the title of the book, which is Semiotics and Linguistics. So semiotics, a little quick definition, is basically the study of signs, right? What do things mean in general, right? Meaning in general. So the idea of humans are friendly. Excuse me. Humans are friendly animals who accommodate each other consciously or subconsciously and shift their speech in the direction of those they're talking to, right? So we naturally want to sound like the people around us if we want to be a part of the people around us. So that comes to kind of the idea of language as identity, right? And because language is very tied to our identity, we see how the ideas, the way people conceive of language and how language should sound, change or not change, is influenced by their ideas of culture, by their ideas of, what is correct or what is incorrect. So the full quote, the reason that this really got the whole, changes spread beyond their original group via weak links, right? Group members who belong to more than one language network and routinely come into contact with people outside their local clique. So, people have different energy, right? Some people are much more gregarious, right? They're the people you can kind of tell have quirks of language, and people pick up on them. They start to adopt them. And so changes happen because people want to be associated with the, person who everybody likes hanging around, right? Because that gives them a little bit of a social cachet to the others. To maybe they would want to be around you if you talk like the person that everybody likes hanging around. So accommodation then occurs, that is, speakers consciously or subconsciously shift their speech in the direction of those they are talking to. Humans are friendly animals who do this naturally, often without realizing it. Usually, both speakers in a conversation adjust the way they talk, but in some cases, one side accommodates more than the other. Now, this comes up a lot in language learning circles, right? Because when somebody is new to a language, it feels like the people who are naturally speaking that language, the people who have been speaking it for either since birth or for so long that it's, basically their more natural language, it feels like the people that are comfortable in the language are accommodating this person trying to learn. And that's true to a certain extent. But really, the person learning is really trying to accommodate the native speaker, the natural speaker, because the person learning the language knows that they will have more cultural cachet if they sound like the natural speaker. So that's where that whole, chase for the, the accentless language transition. But of course, if you've listened to any of the things that I've put out, read any of the things I've put out, there's no such thing as an accentless language, right? Everybody has an accent. And what matters is developing your personal accent for the language so that you can be understood by other people who speak that language. Little quirks here and there, dropping a sound or, going too fast or too slow, those things are very easily accommodated because, again, we're social creatures. We want to understand each other. So that's why I was really excited about reading this book, and I thought you would enjoy it as well. So the second thing that caught my eye. Apparently, some of my Irish ancestors are coming through me. Little sip of coffee must keep the glottis hydrated. Thank you. Excuse me. So, what do you notice about language change? That's the question that came up for me when I was reading this paragraph. So, let's see. Where did I want to talk about? A social trigger is needed to ignite change. This may set off a linguistic tendency which is waiting, ready to go, like a ripe apple about to fall, which is nudged to the ground by a sudden gust of wind. So, what do you notice about language change? The pet peeves, the things that annoy you or that you really enjoy about a language, they reveal our perceptions of what we consider language, right? How we understand what language is. Because I know I wrote this later, but I'm going to say it now. Language is imaginary. It's made up, Yeah, that's a very common opinion in linguistic circles as well. So if you're new to the linguistics world, welcome. Language doesn't exist. But what that really means is language is created in the moment of a person trying to communicate an idea, right? So when we perceive something as wrong, right, a language change as wrong, it reveals to us our, connection to who we want to be considered a part of. And if it's getting esoteric, let me know, right? I'm looking at the chat. So if you have any questions or ideas or things are coming up, please let me know. I'd love to, hear your ideas as well. But, so for instance, the example she gives is, something might be picked up like a sound, right? So the social trigger may pick up on a sound like in New York, the R sound is considered more high prestige than leaving the R sound off. That's a common thing in a few different English dialects. But like if you say New York, it's considered lower class than saying New York. The enunciated R is more prestigious. So experiments have been done where in, higher end stores, you will hear the R pronounced much more clearly than if you go to more discount or lower end stores. And but if the people in the lower end store are asked for, clarification because you didn't understand their New York, then they will enunciate the R because they understand that that is the general, more accepted pronunciation. So we're making all of these shifts, these social, adjustments, language adjustments in seconds every single day in every interaction. We just don't think about it because it's not brought to our attention. So that's the sound, right? But another language change might come from a word ending, right? So there's teenagers in Reading that would add an S to the end, like let's exit, as in let's go, right? And so that started to be one of the leaders of a group of, a gang of teenagers. That was one of his favorite, things to say. And so his social circle really started to pick up on that. And that ending became a marker of that social group. An aspect of syntax. So syntax, such as questions or negatives. In Indian English, this example that Jean gives us, in Indian English, speakers tend to place negatives towards the ends of sentences, as in, all of these pens don't work. In British English, one would be more likely to say, none of these pens work. So some of the people in England or in America might hear the Indian English speaker as wrong because they believe that their English is more correct than somebody who learned English in India, even though India has more English speakers than either America or England. So that shows you, right? There are cultural, ideas that come along with what we consider correct or incorrect. So, let's see. Word meaning can also be affected. And this comes up a lot in, my line of work, actually, more often than people think, considering I do sound. But anyway, I was absolutely devastated, said someone who had spilled wine on a friend's carpet, when originally devastate was used to lay waste a country in war. So in current English, actually, that is not a controversial. Devastate isn't remembered for being that, or it's not directly associated with that anymore. So even though people remember or realize that's where it came from, it's just devastate is so much more general now. It's considered accepted to just generalize it. Decimate, however, it was a funny thing a few years ago, and it was probably just a quirk that a bunch of guys were having fun with online. That they started to get really persnickety about people using decimate to like wipe out any number of things other than every 10th, right? Because decimate comes from the Latin, which is to take out every 10th soldier. And I believe my brain tells me the legend or the story is that like if a phalanx of soldiers or a group of Roman soldiers, would get in trouble and nobody would come forward to like take the blame, every 10th soldier would be killed or some kind of punishment killed. I mean, who knows at one point, who knows in some generals, right? But like there would be some kind of punishment would happen every 10th, right? So decimate is basically taking out every 10th. And like I might be conflating that with, that might be one of those like back formations. Also, that might not be the right term for that concept either, but you get what I'm saying. Words change meaning, right? And some people will pick up on certain words and say, it shouldn't be like that. Literally is a good one, because like literally has been used to mean not literally, as in figuratively, for centuries, maybe 1,000 of years, So, but like, it's so literal is literal, right? It means It literally means literal, like, what is this? But because language doesn't exist, we can say, I was literally devastated without saying was basically laid to waste in a course of a war, right? So language is what we make of it. I love this. Another sip of coffee, thank you. As I turn the page on the next section that really, got my mind. Oh, this is where I wrote down language as meaningless. So what does that mean? When, so step, let's see. Yes, the word step became no in French. And I'm going to let Jean Aitchison explain this story because this is just, this is new info to me, and I really think you'll appreciate it. French shows a pattern of negative strengthening. Its original negative was ne, from Latin non, but various strengthening words were added. Not a jot, not a straw, not a dot. One of these, n'est pas, originally not a step, has won out as the normal negative, as in je ne sais pas, I do not know. Though increasingly, ne is dropped and pas regarded as the real negative, je sais pas. So the whole process may start over again. Somehow, in the course of about 1,000 years of, people speaking this language that we call French, ne pas, not a step, became pas, which means no, or the negative, or not. Step became no. Step became not. Language is meaningless. It changes, and we can't help it. We can only admire it. I feel, and that brings us to sort of where this idea is going, right? So, Jean will take us there. So, language swings about. This is Jean. Any language, therefore, swings about, following the needs of its speakers, who are often unaware of what is happening, but it inevitably retains its patterned nature. So, let's see, I'm going to make sure. Yes. So, this idea came after she explained the concepts that even though language changes, not every aspect changes right away, right? I listed a whole different group of, whole bunch of things of how language can change. The meaning of a word can change. The ending of a word can change. An individual sound in the word can have different meanings based on different cultural aspects. And so, any language following the needs of its speakers. Speakers also need organization, right? Languages are able to be defined because we have rules. And I like to think of them more as guidelines than rules because, as we have discussed today, right, language doesn't exist. It is meaningless. It has patterns that we become familiar with and share amongst a group of people that will help us exchange information between each other. But it is not stable. But it does need to have some things that we agree on, right? So New York as the standard works, but New York doesn't make it unintelligible. And, in 150 years, the York accent might win out over the R accent. And people, like we study Shakespeare and notice how the meters are a little bit off from how we would pronounce things, they would be like, huh, interesting. Did you know that the R used to be much more prominent in these words? It's an interesting phenomenon. But it takes time because we do still need the common organizational patterns to understand each other. So we have buckets of concepts, of ideas, of sounds, right? And we put them in different orders. And generally we keep to a selected few amount of things, right? We have a certain number of vowel sounds in a language. We don't tend to use more than 40, 50 sounds in a language, generally vowel and consonant sounds. And because our brains don't really want to do more work than it needs to. So if it can, use two sounds to mean different things, the same sound to mean two different things in different contexts, it's going to do that. So, wow, I really went off track, didn't I? What I'm going to end it with, I think I didn't go too off track. It's not like, I'm still talking about language, but yeah, there's a balance between organization and chaos, right? We have patterns that we're used to, but you can play with those patterns like jazz, right? That's a good metaphor. I think jazz is like the best metaphor for a lot of things because everybody understands. There's a spine, there's a base, there's something there, but you can put your own interpretation on it and it works. It's still that, So the theme of the day, that's what I decided when I read this chapter and I wanted to share it with you. Personal inclination needs to intersect with social process. So being sensitive to something doesn't mean it will trigger something unless circumstances intervene. So Jean Acheson said it this way. Although social desires and cultural needs may trigger change, the changes triggered are ready to happen at a deeper level. Only certain changes are likely to occur. So a lot of factors need to come into intersection in order for a language change to happen. And there's no real way to control how that happens because there's no way to know who is going to have the cultural cachet amongst a group of people that will, influence how everybody else wants to speak. We make these decisions in seconds and, and very subconsciously, very often, some consciously. So, we do understand what we're doing in certain social situations, but these are very unconscious ideas. And so, yeah, it was an interesting chapter that I thought you would enjoy be getting a sample of. And if you want to pick it up, this is the Routledge Companion to Semiotics and Linguistics. The more I read it, the more I realize that I am very much a semiotician, something. Obviously, linguistics is my jam, but it is, to me, the most fascinating thing is about how we create meaning from these sounds, right? It's an interesting process of how people decide what is meaning. Okay, so let's move on to a more technical explanation. All right, let's come out of the clouds. Let's come back down to earth a little bit and talk about how language is actually real. Okay, so I'm going to make sure, yes. Ha ha ha, it's all ready. I'm, my last live stream did not go as well as I'd hoped. So the fact that like I'm actually like things are working, I'm very excited. Okay, so on my screen here, I'm going to do a quick cut. You can't see me anymore, haha. But I am showing you the Wikipedia page for the syllable, an explanation of what the syllable is. So basically, I'm taking this French course right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and full screen the oh, that's why. And I'm taking this French course right now, and we are starting with learning how to count syllables. And it's a really great course. There we go. Okay. So basically, there are parts of speech that are more important than others when we are speaking. So let's talk about the syllable. And the syllable is, okay, sorry. It's funny because it's like, how am I going to talk about this? I didn't create a lesson plan necessarily. I just like, let's pull up the Wikipedia page and go through it together. So from here, we have an onset, a nucleus, and a coda. I'm going to skip the rhyme right now. It's, as it says, it splits into the nucleus and coda. So we're just going to use the nucleus and coda and just ignore the grouping part. So the onset and the coda, right? The onset is the start of, as it says, a consonant or consonant cluster. So it tends to be a consonant, vowel, consonant. That tends to be the general idea of what a syllable is. But again, languages are weird, so they don't always follow the rules. But basically, if you listen for a consonant to start and a vowel, consonant, vowel, you're going to find the syllable. Some languages are going to have consonant, vowel, consonants more often than others. So that's one of those things that you have to do some of your own personal study on, depending on the language that you are trying to learn. So we also have here a Chinese model. So if we see here, initial and final, it has an additional step in the middle between the nucleus and the initial. And because my language doesn't really use this, I'm not as familiar with this one. But this shows you how what we think of as a grouping of sounds is arbitrary, right? We are choosing to call a group of consonant vowel, just consonant vowel, a syllable, right? Another syllable, right, could be vowel consonant. It's a it goes back to what we were discussing earlier. In the context of this word, in the context of this situation, what is the syllable, right? So let's take linguistics, right? So how many syllables does linguistics have? So do we want to split the linguistics up into ling, or maybe we want to do gui? Wait, do we want to add the ngu? See, this is another thing too about the language. So in English, if I'm going to do this split up, right, I'm going to listen to what sounds actually do go together. Ng is not a sound that is connected in English, right? So the syllable can't be ling. It has to end at the and the next syllable has to start at the g. Lingue. But so the first syllable of linguistics has a consonant, vowel, consonant. But the second syllable of linguistics does not have a consonant at the end. It just has a consonant vowel. Gui. Gui. But it does have two vowels in that syllable. U-E. We, in English, tend to make that into a diphthong, a movement vowel, but there are two vowels there. The next syllable has an interesting quirk. See if you can hear it. Stis, stick, stick, st, st. So there's two consonants that start that syllable, right? And it also ends in a consonant. Now, the s at the end of stick, linguistic, right? The s is kind of on its own. It is another, it brings another meaning into linguistic. Linguistic is its word. Linguistics is a discipline, right? The linguistic pattern, right? Linguistic is its own word. So adding the s onto linguistics creates a different word, which means that the s is its own syllable, technically. Or is it? So that's the issue with trying to figure out how many syllables are in a word and trying to make it too rigid of an idea. So linguistics as a word can have, let's say, linguistic, 4 or 3, depending on how you might define it. As a matter, and another linguist very much might even take out this together, because they don't think that you should have consonant as a onset. So it varies based on the moment. When you're learning a different language, this is very frustrating because you want to know how to pronounce the word. You just want to know how to say it correctly so that other people can understand you. And that's where this study of what the syllable structure is really comes in handy, because when you're struggling with a word that you don't know, you can go into the structure and say, hey, what is this word? What are the sounds that are made up in this word? And where do I hear the person that I'm, listening to speak this word, where are they stopping and starting these sounds? Where are they grouping these vowels and consonant sounds? So, yeah, I think that it's a really great thing to investigate if you are interested in, there we go. If you're interested in learning another language. All right, so let me check any chats. No chats at the moment. So I am going to take this opportunity to say goodbye for the day. Oh, I hope you can't hear that, but if you can, I am sorry. That might be why I'm ending it. I didn't know there was going to be construction outside. I'm going to get a better mic soon. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any comments or questions about the topics we talked about earlier, about, what language being meaningless, or if you have more of a, technical question about the construction of language, like what is a syllable? Like how do you make up a syllable? Let me know, right? Comment down below, send me a message, and, hit subscribe if you want to, be here for the next live stream, which will be next Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're on daylight time right now, so it would be BDD. So yes, if you enjoyed yourself today, let me know, and I look forward to seeing you in a future class. Have a great day.